Hi, welcome to today's On This Day in Tudor History with me, Claire Ridgway, author, funnily enough, of On This Day in Tudor History. Okay, where am I taking you today? Well, to 1558. But on this day in Tudor history, the 17th of November, 1558, 42-year-old Queen Mary I, daughter of King Henry VIII and his first wife Catherine of Aragon, died at St James's Palace in London. She'd been queen for just 5 years and 4 months, and she passed the throne on to her 25-year-old half-sister Elizabeth, who was daughter of King Henry VIII and his second wife Anne Boleyn. Now, Parliament was in session on the day that Mary died. So Mary's Lord Chancellor, Nicholas Heath, Archbishop of York, announced the Queen's death to the House of Lords. Then, at noon, the Houses of Lords and Commons proclaimed Elizabeth Queen at Whitehall, Queen Elizabeth I. Sir Nicholas Throckmorton recorded how Elizabeth had arranged with him to bring her Mary's enamelled black ring, a ring given to her by her husband Philip of Spain, on her death so that Elizabeth could be sure that Mary was really dead. Throckmorton said that he galloped in post, that means quickly, from court to Elizabeth's estate at Hatfield with the ring, but that his news was stale, for it had already reached Elizabeth. But it served as confirmation, though, from a trustworthy source. "My news was stale," Throckmorton wrote, "but yet she knew it true." The Count of Ferrier recorded that 6 of Mary's council travelled to see the new Queen at Hatfield. The day on which the Queen died, after the customary proclamation was made at Westminster and London, the Council decided that the Chancellor, the Admiral, the Earl of Shrewsbury, the Earl of Pembroke, the Earl of Derby and William Howard should go to the new Queen and perform the ordinary ceremonies, and that the remainder should stay behind. But everyone wanted to be first to get out. Sir Robert Naunton, in his Fragmenta Regalia, writes a very romanticised account of Elizabeth finding out that she was queen, which, on her sister's departure, she most religiously acknowledged, ascribing the glory of her deliverance to God above. For she, being then at Hatfield and under a guard, and the Parliament sitting at the self-same time, she received both the news of the Queen's death and her own proclamation by the general consent of the House and the public suffrage of the people, whereat, falling on her knees after a good time of respiration, she uttered this verse of the psalm: Ad Domino factum est istud, et est mirabile in oculis nostris. My Latin isn't very good. The Latin translates to, "This is the Lord's doing. It is marvellous in our eyes." And it's from Psalm 118. Now, according to this tradition, Elizabeth was sitting reading under an old oak tree in the parkland around the Palace of Hatfield. She was doing that when the men arrived, just as Kate Blanchett is in that movie, that Elizabeth movie. She was doing that when the men arrived to give her news of her accession. Sadly, this romantic tradition may well not be true. As historian David Starkey points out, this account was written 70 years after the event and is psychologically wrong, as it has Elizabeth speaking only after a good time of respiration, when Elizabeth had already heard the news and wasn't the sort to receive news with what Starkey describes as female fluttering. I do love it, though. I love that scene in the Kate Blanchett movie, and I love visiting the oak tree in the parkland at Hatfield and just imagining Elizabeth sitting there and reciting that psalm when she hears that she is queen. Of course, that oak tree is not the tree that Elizabeth sat under. However, our present Queen, Queen Elizabeth II, planted a new oak in place of the dead oak tree on the 22nd of July 1985. And there's a plaque there that reads, "This oak tree was planted by Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II on the 22nd of July 1985 on the site of the original oak tree under which Her Majesty the Queen Elizabeth I heard of her accession to the throne." Now, the 17th of November, Elizabeth I's accession was celebrated as Accession Day throughout her reign, and also the reigns of many of her successors. As well as Accession Day, it was also known as Queen Elizabeth's Day or Queen's Day. It was celebrated with the ringing of bells. Why don't they ever ring when I want them to? Processions, the burning of an effigy of the Pope, and special tilts in which knights not only jousted, but also dressed up and took part in special pageants involving poetry and theatre. It was a real day of celebration. And these Accession Day celebrations continued well into the 18th century, with Elizabeth being seen as an icon of the Protestant Revolution and effigies of the Pope and the devil being traditionally burnt on this day. It is not marked today in the UK though, but those of us that are into Tudor history might think about Elizabeth today, and I might well raise a glass to Gloriana, the Virgin Queen, good Queen Bess. After all, she was the daughter of my very favourite historical character, so I will be raising a glass to Queen Elizabeth I today on her Accession Day. So a good one today. Well, bad in that Queen Mary I died, but then the good news of Queen Elizabeth I coming to the throne. Thank you for joining me. I'll be back tomorrow with another Tudor history event for you. You can subscribe to the channel by clicking round about there. You can give me a like and leave me a comment as well if you have something to say or just want to share your opinion or view. And you can hit the bell to be notified as videos go live. Thank you. Bye-bye.